This period of having to stay at home continues here in Mexico. Well, we don't have to stay at home, but there's nothing to do if you go out. So I was out for a walk earlier today. I walked about 10 or 12 kilometers before the rain started, which is happening now. And it's Sunday. And I'm going to continue this. I've done it twice. I did Motorhead on the 8th of May. That was Motorhead Day. And I did Kiss last week. I'm going to review or go through a band's entire discography, but I can only do it with bands that I really, really like. My really top bands. I can do, I think, about 4 more. So I'm either going to do 4 more. Really, Sunday is the only chance I can really do them. So however long this period lasts, maybe I'll do them all. If it ends before that, maybe I won't get to those other 4. You will all lose if you don't get to see those other 4 bands I'm talking about. But today I'm going to do Slayer. And the reason I'm doing Slayer today, I could have done any one of these 4 or 5 bands that I plan to do in the future. The reason I'm going to do Slayer is because yesterday was International Slayer Day. It was June 6th, and I didn't have a chance to do it yesterday, but I'll do it today because it's still, for me, every day is Slayer Day. With all these bands, I don't think I ever really need a reason to talk about them or listen to them. They're bands that I listen to on a regular basis. But today I'm going to talk about Slayer. I have a long history with Slayer. The first Slayer album, Show No Mercy, came out in 1983. We'll get right to it. And here it is. This album came out, I think it came out, was it 83? I can't see the date on here. I think it came out in 83, maybe late 83, November or December. I remember I got this in the summer of 84. That was a very pivotal summer for me musically. I was I've been listening to metal or hard rock for years before that. But it was around this time, 1984, where they were starting to get some more metal shows, radio shows, and they were starting to play heavier stuff, not just, Van Halen and Kiss and Black Sabbath. And it was around that time. I used to go camping with my parents in the summer. And I used to listen to these metal radio shows, and at home too. And they played, in the summer of 84, I got Slayer, Show No Mercy, Anthrax, Fistful of Metal, Exciter, Violence and Force. I already had Kill 'Em All. I got Metallica and Kill 'Em All in December 83. So Slayer, Kill 'Em All, summer of 84, 36 years ago. I've been into Slayer, huge Slayer fan for a long, long time. One of my very top bands. I'm starting already with the adjectives and the superlatives. This was really, really cool. When I first heard this album, it was, I remember I had it on a tape on the radio. They played Evil Has No Boundaries, and I think the Antichrist. I used to have tons and tons of mixed tapes, as probably a lot of people my age did. Used to tape things on the radio, and so you could listen to them if you couldn't afford to buy the full albums. And I had Evil Has No Boundaries and the Antichrist maybe I'd had it earlier, and then I actually finally bought the album. It's an excellent album. It's typical 1984, I guess, metal or thrash metal. Very good debut album. It maybe doesn't hold up as much. Great songs. I think the songs are really good. Slayer, I think in this album, I think other bands, they went the opposite way. I think Slayer started more melodically and then got heavier, especially like Black Magic has that sounds very happy, but it's not. And but this was maybe not the best sounding album, as a lot of bands' first albums weren't. And but this is really good. Every song on this is a perfect album. I wish I can't really complain about it, but it's not even a negative thing I could say. I wish that this had sounded like later Slayer albums, even like how the next Slayer album sounded. I wish this could have sounded like that. But every song on here is a winner. Evil Has No Boundaries, Antichrist, Die by the Sword, Fight Till Death. I'm not going to read them all, but you know them. I love this album a lot. It was my introduction to Slayer. And they were, at that point, I was into a lot of bands. They were another band, but they were one of the ones that stuck with me. So and typical 84, pretty cheesy album cover. but the logo stayed the same. They changed it. I mean, they modified the style of it, but more or less the same Slayer logo they've had for I guess 40 years. Excellent debut album. Of the big four, for me it's this or Kill 'Em All. They're my favorite. Maybe, I don't know, but I like this album a lot. Then they did this little EP called Haunting the Chapel. This was just 3 songs. It was Chemical Warfare, Captor of Sin, Haunting the Chapel. Very different sound. This sounded heavier. It sounded darker. They sounded much more serious. And I never fully got into this. I love Chemical Warfare is a great song. Captor of Sin and Haunting the Chapel were never real favorites of mine. A great thing about this was Aggressive Perfecter was on it. That was a song I had heard. That may have been the first Slayer album I heard. I think I had that on some Metal Blade compilation album or something. But Aggressive Perfecter was included on here. I think I only had it on that compilation album before, or maybe I taped it on the radio or something. But it was a 3-song EP, a gap EP between Show No Mercy and the next one I'm going to talk about. So, but I know this is very popular amongst Slayer fans. Haunting the Chapel is excellent. They stepped it up here. Next, I think this was when Slayer became Slayer. Hell Awaits came out. I can almost remember the date this came out. I saw them on this tour. I saw them on March 31st, 1985, opening for Venom at the Concert Hall in Toronto, and that was on March 31st. Hell Awaits was coming out maybe April 12th or April 19th or something, because Razor, who was also on that bill, Evil Invaders or Executioner's song, it was Evil Invaders, I think, was coming out. One of them, Razor and Slayer, on April 12th and April 19th. I can't remember which is which. But man, Slayer really stepped it up on this one. They became much more serious, more evil, more Slayer. The songs were really much heavier. They were scary. They were very intense, very fast. Everything, I think sonically, everything about this album was much better. I remember at the time I was disappointed that it was only 7 songs. For me, the songs weren't quite as good as on Show No Mercy, but I'd say it's a wash. The sound of this album with the songs of Show No Mercy were pretty equal. Hell Awaits has stayed a Slayer staple for all these years. Kill Again, At Dawn They Sleep, Crypts of Eternity. I never got into that one too much. But this is also an excellent album. This was when Slayer really became Slayer. And I was there. Like I said, I saw them in March '85, just when this. And I guess they did play some songs from that album because they were promoting it at the time. They were talking about it. And I don't know why, but I never got a Slayer shirt at that concert. I got a Venom shirt at that concert. I'm not sure why, because I was never at any point a bigger Venom fan than Slayer fan. I was always much more about Slayer than Venom. Maybe the Slayer shirts were sold out, or maybe I didn't like them. But I didn't get a Slayer shirt at this show, but I did get one when I saw them. I saw them in 1988 again. I've seen them many times over the years, but the next time I saw them was '88, and I did get a Slayer shirt. Next, I feel like I said this earlier when I did the Kiss album reviews that I could almost do standalone videos for certain albums. Rain and Blood is one. I could talk about this. This album is only 28 or 29 minutes. I could talk about it for longer than that. And I'm going to say something very bold. I hate to say it. Listen carefully. Best album ever created in the history of music for me. I don't know if that's true or not. You have, what do you call your favorite album, or your top 10, your Desert Island albums, greatest of all time albums, whatever you want to call them. And they change a little bit over time, and your opinion of them changes, and they go up and down, and what you think one day maybe changes another day. But the one album that when you have these, metal fans have these conversations a lot about favorite album of all time, or favorite song, favorite band. For quite a few years, I think I've come to realize, I'm 50 years old and it's taken this long to realize that I think Rain and Blood could be my top album ever by any band. Studio album for sure. every song is just, this is just like an unbelievably perfect album. Like, it's so hard to do this. The sound, the songs, the lyrics, the look, the timing of it, the impact that it had on me. I was 16 when this came out. Was just incredible. Every song. This one I will talk about. Every song. Angel of Death, maybe as close to a Slayer anthem as you can get. It's not an anthem in the terms of Let's Rock, AC/DC, Kiss, party, rock and roll night anthem like that. But in terms of thrash metal or in terms of Slayer, Angel of Death is like the, I don't know, you could say the rock and roll all night of this kind of music. Incredible. Piece by piece. Modulistic terror, a vast sadistic feast. The only way to X is going piece by piece. Bones and blood lie on the ground. Rotten limbs lie dead. Decapitated bodies found on my wall. Your head. Necrophobic. Altar of Sacrifice. I remember the first time I heard Altar of Sacrifice. It was on... There used to be a radio show, a college radio show in Canada. We say university. A university radio show in Toronto in... I guess around this time, maybe I started listening to it around 85, called Arg Rock. I was on CKLN 88.1 in Toronto. It was hosted by a guy called Brian Taylor. If you're watching this and you're from Toronto and you're of my age, you know who Brian Taylor is. And he played, and it was on at 11 o'clock every Tuesday, I think, or 10 o'clock, and I used to stay up and listen to it and tape it. I got horrible reception because it was a university station. They didn't have a strong signal. I just sit like in a perfect spot in my room with the antenna of the radio. I had a little boombox or whatever they call it, and he played. It was I guess they were back then. I don't know if they were leaks, but he played Altar of Sacrifice and Jesus Saves. And I remember the Altar of Sacrifice because I listened to it for a long time. It had a drumstick, like a count in. So I remember that Altar of Sacrifice and Jesus Saves. And I loved it. I had been a Slayer a Slayer fan at that point for a year or two, and I loved it. Criminally Insane. Man, every song, it's hard to, I can't really even pick a favorite. Reborn, Epidemic, maybe Postmortem might be my favorite. Again, it's hard to choose one out of such a huge pile, but Postmortem might be my favorite Slayer song, not just on this album, but ever. Incredible. Do You Want to Die? The waves of blood are rushing near, pounding at the walls of life, draining back my sanity, the rising body from the grave, showing new reality, what I am, what I want, I'm only after death. And then Raining Blood, even better. The song is, both songs that they kind of go together, Postmortem and Raining Blood. Trapped in Purgatory, and A Lifeless Object Alive. I can't say enough about this album, and it's so weird because, as I said, it's only 28 or 29 minutes, but it doesn't feel short. It's 10 songs, and the songs are only let's say Angel of Death is 450, 202, 138, 249, 249, 213, 220, 212, 244, and 423. So the first and the last song are 4 minutes, or 4 minutes plus. Everything else is 2 something, and one of them is 1 something. So it's a very short album, but it is 10 songs. Every song has, an intro and verse, kind of chorus. Slayer didn't really have, well, they kind of had choruses. Solos, and then, bridges or mosh parts. You'd say, I guess, bridges at that point. So, I mean, you could stretch this album out if they played it slowly, if they played it like a Iron Maiden pace or Judas Priest pace. This album would be, you could stretch it out 8 or 9 minutes longer or something. But it's just so fast. But it doesn't feel like a short album. Like when you finish listening to it, you feel complete. You didn't feel like you needed more. I just can't say enough about this album, Rain and Blood. As I said, I mean, what else can you say? If for me it's maybe the greatest album ever recorded, what else can you say? One small, not really a regret. Actually, I wouldn't say a regret at all. I didn't see them on this tour. I mentioned when I reviewed all the Motorhead catalog, 23 or something albums last month. I saw the first Motorhead concert I saw was Orgasmatron Tour in 1986. It was November 15th, 1986. Slayer was playing the Concert Hall in Toronto on November 28th. It's stupid that I remember these dates, but I can't remember a date from a year ago. Motorhead was November 15th. Slayer, I think, was November 28th or something. I was 15 years old, or I just turned 16. I turned 16 in November of that year, and or 17. I don't know, whatever. And I didn't have a lot of money. I could only afford to go to one, so I had to choose between Motorhead and Slayer. I went to Motorhead, which I don't regret because I loved seeing that concert, and also I had seen Slayer, as I mentioned earlier, in 1985. Even though this is my favorite Slayer album, I missed them on that tour. I did meet them. I didn't mention, but when I saw them in '85 opening for Venom, I met Kerry King, Jeff Hanneman, and Dave Lombardo, all separately. Three of them separately. I think they were between the bands or something. Each of them I was kind of off to the side of the stage at the front, and they were kind of waiting off. Maybe it was after their set or before their set or between or before it started or something. And each of them came out, and so I met each of them. And they signed my ticket, and they were. I remember Dave Lombardo was a very nice guy. Kerry King, not so much. That's another story. Oh, I remember perfectly our little conversation. I remember it like it just happened. The little conversation we had with Kerry King. That was 35 years ago. Who cares? And so I met Slayer. But anyway, I digress, and I will say again, best album ever, possibly. Live Undead, I just realized that, and I never bought Live Undead. To me, that was a little bit like kind of even more of a fill-in than Haunting the Chapel. It was 3 live songs. So if you're wondering about Live Undead, that's all I have to say about that. How did they follow up Rain and Blood? They followed up Rain and Blood with South of Heaven. Rain and Blood was just unbelievably fast, even by thrash standards. It was just crazy. They were heavier and faster than anybody back then. And South of Heaven, I don't know what people thought about it then. I think now you hear these kind of retro reviews, which is maybe what I'm doing now. This album was definitely slower, and I think I've read that they've said over the years that was intentional. I guess they thought, what can they do to top Rain and Blood? So they intentionally slowed it down a little bit. I know Kerry King doesn't like this album. I love this album. I loved it at the time. I love it now. I loved it at every point in between. This could maybe be my second favorite Slayer album. South of Heaven has become a Slayer standard at every show. I think they play South of Heaven. Same with Mandatory Suicide. Ghosts of War is a great song. Maybe it loses half a tick for Descendant Aggressor. It's a cover. Maybe it would have been a good B-side or something, but this is a great album. Live Undead, Behind the Crooked Cross, Read Between the Lies, Cleanse the Soul, Spill the Blood. I love South of Heaven. I never cared. I don't think I did. Maybe I did at that time. Bands talked about, or fans talked about. It seemed that we had the idea that faster the better. And I don't think I thought that. I just thought the better the better. But excellent album. And I did see them on this tour. I saw them in 1988 with Motorhead and Overkill. One of the best triple bills I've ever seen. It was also at the Concert Hall where I saw them, where I had seen them the first time in 1985. Excellent. South of Heaven. I don't care if it's slow. I don't care. Kerry King says some of the songs sound happy, like Slayer happy. I didn't care. South of Heaven is a classic Slayer album. I think it's a fan favorite. Maybe Kerry King doesn't like it, but not just me. But I think in general, Slayer fans, you got to tell me, big album. Next, this you could maybe say was the Slayer's Holy Trinity. How they had similar with Motorhead had Overkill, Bomber, Ace of Spades. You could say Metallica had, I guess, Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, or you could say Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, Justice for All. This is the third Slayer album in a row that was just unbelievably good. Was Seasons in the Abyss, 1990. This again, almost every song. I love all the songs. Not quite as much as the other two, but a great album. War Ensemble became a staple, and I think it's a Slayer song that's always been played at every show. Seasons in the Abyss, the title track, is excellent too. Dead Skin Mask, I think, was another one that I think they played just about at every show. So at least 3 Slayer classics on this album. I love Blood Red, Spirit in Black. Really good album, and I saw them on this tour too. A lot of people did. That was on the Clash of the Titans tour. It was Slayer, Anthrax, Megadeth, and Alice in Chains. And Alice in Chains opened every show, but the other 3 rotated first or third or headlining position when they played in Toronto. Slayer played in the headlining position. It was at the CNE Grandstand, which was a big place. It held 15 or 20,000 people. I don't think there were that many there. It wasn't sold out, but it was amazing to see Slayer. I don't know how many people were there, maybe 10,000, and that was a lot considering I'd seen them 2 years earlier and 3 years before that with 2,000 at the most. One of them was opening for Venom. So it was cool seeing Slayer starting to get some real attention. But can't say anything about this album. Slayer were untouchable back then. The most probably hardcore fan base, and deservedly with a run of 3 albums. You could even go back and say 4. Excellent. Decade of Aggression. This was a Slayer live album. I never really got into this too much. Live albums for me were kind of hit and miss. As I mentioned in the Kiss album review, Kiss Alive was the first album I ever got in my life, and it's for sure the best album. I'm maybe contradicting myself. Let's say I'll put it up there with Rain and Blood, even though it's not a studio album. And I love Iron Maiden Live After Death is my second favorite live album ever. I don't know why I never got into this. I'm really not sure. I had no reason not to. As I was just saying, Slayer, I was a huge Slayer fan. And I always did love the picture on the back of this big arena, the empty arena, setting it up or tearing it down. Probably setting it up. It was cool to see that. Great. I mean, the track listing is great. Hell Awaits, Antichrist, War Ensemble, South of Heaven. All the songs I mentioned, Postmortem, Chemical Warfare, every song is great. I maybe should go back and listen to Decade of Aggression. There's nothing wrong with it. I just, for whatever reason, it never really struck with me. So can't say too much about Decade of Aggression. Not bad, but just maybe I just wanted more new Slayer. Anyway. Next was 1994, Divine Intervention. If I remember correctly, you associate certain things. The memory I have of this one, you would have to go and check the Google machine, but I think this came out the same day as Monster by REM. If they didn't come out the same day, I know for sure I bought them the same day. That's what I'll say about that. This was 94, maybe September or October 94. For me, this is the first... not misstep that Slayer had. It was the first Slayer album studio album that it just didn't totally click with me. Now, one thing I can say about Slayer is all of their albums, I mean, obviously these ones that I've talked about already are the best, but even their later ones when a lot of people gave up on them, the one thing I can say about Slayer is every Slayer album has at least one, and realistically probably 2 or 3 songs that I could say these are like perfect Slayer songs. Maybe the other ones were not as good, but I think even up to the last album, Slayer had songs on every album that you go, this is why I like Slayer. A lot of my other favorite bands didn't have that. They had albums that, they were not that bad, but they didn't have any great songs that really hit me. So I can say about this one, it did. I loved Ditto Head. It's a 2-minute and 10-minute song, but I loved Ditto Head and Killing Fields and 213, or I'm not sure if it was 213 or 213, which was Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment number, and that song was about him. But yeah, this one, I'm not sure why I didn't get into it. It's not... Now, Dave Lombardo had left. This is the first album that, without Dave Lombardo, I don't think I cared about that. I'll talk about that more, I think, later when I get to 2006 Slayer. But I'm not sure. Maybe just the songs were not as good. It was still a Slayer album, but this one, I never got into this one as much. A couple of great songs. Oh, Toby Wright produced it. He produced Alice in Chains. So a little bit of a after. I mean, it's hard to keep up the pace that Slayer was on in terms of how much I would like them. Very, very hard to to put out these albums that are so great again and again and again. But again, I can't say a bad album, just one that didn't connect with me. Now, here's one. This was, I think, kind of a polarizing album. This is Undisputed Attitude, 1996. Something I can tell you about this came out around the time of the Kiss reunion tour, maybe in May or June 1996 or something like that. And this was really weird. But I was always I'm one of the music fans. I was the music guy. People knew me as being the music guy. And I bought all the music magazines. All my friends were, friends because we liked the same music. And I always knew when albums were coming out. I knew dates. I remember I walked into HMV record store. HMV was a big record store chain, a British chain, but it was big in Canada. And there was an HMV at Stone Road Mall in Guelph. And I walked in there and I saw on the wall, I don't know if it was new releases or whatever, I saw this one, had no idea it was even coming out. I didn't hear a word about this coming out. I saw it it's not the most obvious album cover. I mean, the guy it's kind of a reverse image of some Slayer fans, and you can see the Slayer, but it doesn't stand out. And I saw it and I looked at it. I had no idea that these were cover songs. I thought that the song titles were strange. Disintegration, Free Money, Spiritual Law, Mr. Freeze, Richard Hung Himself. I remember thinking, wow, this is really weird. And then I got home and I bought it immediately. As soon as I saw it, I couldn't believe that Slayer had a new album, and even more that I didn't know. So I did buy it immediately, went home and opened it and listened to it, and I saw that they were cover songs. Loved it right from the start. Maybe this is an example of not having any hype works better to the advantage. If I'd known that this was coming out, maybe I would have had some expectations for it, and either good or bad, or if I'd heard Slayer's doing a cover album, I would have thought, oh man, they're doing a cover album, why aren't they doing a new album? And then I would have maybe been predisposed to not like this. So sometimes just having something with no knowledge of it maybe is better. But I love this album. I listened to it earlier this week. I listened to the whole thing. Actually, I listened to the Japanese version, which has two, I think, bonus songs. Memories of Tomorrow by Suicidal Tendencies and Sick Boy by GBH. Sick Boy is really, really good. Now, I know a lot of fans hate this album, maybe because it's a cover album. I'm not sure why. I love it. I like it better than Divine Intervention. I probably like it better than a couple of the other ones I'm going to talk about. I really liked it a lot, and I know their original plan was to, I only read about this many, many years later, was to do a cover of metal, an album of metal covers. They were going to do Deep Purple and Judas Priest and I think Iron Maiden, and apparently it wasn't working, so they did these hardcore punk songs. I think it's much, much better suited to Slayer's style. I would love to hear, I don't know if they ever recorded those songs or if they just rehearsed them or what. I would love to hear them if they exist. But I think this was probably the right way to go. This is a very fast, just a good album. I know it's not Slayer songs, but a lot of them, they sound like they could be Slayer songs. Good attitude. Undisputed Attitude, and you can see why. Very good. I like this album a lot. No problem with it at all. Like I said, I would put it up there with some of the really good Slayer albums. If you don't like it, I'm not sure why. Maybe you just don't like covers. But I have no problem with Undisputed Attitude. Next was 1998, Diabolus and Musica. I'm not sure how to pronounce the Latin way, but this came out in 1998. This was one, as I just mentioned, I think a lot of people, I do remember some hype for this one. I remember people were maybe predisposed to like this one, to not like this one, because this was the time that, they called it nu metal. It was Limp Bizkit and Korn, and I don't know who else at that time was kind of big. But so I think people had the idea that, well, Slayer is going to be nu metal, and because they're going to sound like Korn and Limp Bizkit, which to me they didn't. But also, this is the first album, and I think this is big in the metal world. When you don't see the logo that you've seen for years, at this point Slayer had been around for 15 years, I think subconsciously you don't have that instant connection with it. So I think a lot of people didn't like the timing of it. It was 98, And I could say something similar about this with Saint Anger too. Maybe the logo, the new metal touch. I didn't really have a problem with this album. I liked it, not my favorite, but I think I liked it better than Divine Intervention. No, I did for sure. To me, the Bitter Peace, Slayer always had good opening songs. Bitter Peace was good. Death's Head and Stain of Mind are both excellent. What's a song? Yeah. I think it's Love to Hate. Enter my mind, can you stop the rain? That one was maybe a little bit new metalish. I think that was Love to Hate. In the Name of God is a great song. Lies in the Name of God. Screaming from the Sky, excellent. Point is classic Slayer. It's thrash metal. So no. I think this album is pretty good. Some people maybe don't like it. This could maybe be like there are some albums that people didn't like at the time, but then over time, Motorhead, Another Perfect Day was like that. People didn't like it at the time, but going back, I think a lot of people are still holding out that Saint Anger is gonna finally catch on some 20 or 17 years later. I don't know about that, but this is pretty good. Diabolus and Musica, to me, it was still Slayer. A little bit different. Probably their most, I wouldn't say experimental, but the album that's least like what you would expect from Slayer is this one. But no problem. 2001, God Hates Us All. Amazingly, this album came out on September 11th, which is just incredible. And this, I'm a little bit mixed on this one. It has about 3 or 4, maybe 5 songs that, again, as I mentioned earlier, could be like the best Slayer songs ever. But a couple of ones for me, like Payback, I thought Payback was crap. I'm not even shy. It was just so like, give me a break. Just, and what was the other one that was like that? Oh, Exile. Exile and Payback. They were just 2 meathead, knuckle-dragging songs, like tough guy Slayer songs. But Disciple, which is kind of the, not the opening song. There was an introduction opening, Disciple of Christ. Darkness of Christ. Sorry, Disciple, again, could be my favorite Slayer song. It's top 5 for sure. These are not official rankings, by the way. Disciple, Drone Since the Dawn of Time, Compelled to Live Your Sheltered Life. Not once has anyone ever seen such a rise of pure hypocrisy. I'll instigate, I'll free your mind, I'll show you what I've known all this time. God hates us all. You know it's true, he hates this place. You know it's true, he hates this place. You know it's true, he hates this race. Suicide, homicide, suicide, hate heals, you should try it sometime. Strive for peace with acts of war, the beauty of death we all adore. I have no faith distracting me. I know why your prayers will never be answered. God hates us all. I got to listen to this song now. It's like you start to salivate when you start thinking about what you're going to eat. And now I need to hear this song. What are the other lyrics where it gets fast? Pessimist, terrorist, targeting the next mark. Cold chaos, feeding on hysteria. Cutthroat, slit your wrist, shoot you in the back, fair game. Drug abuse, self-abuse, searching for the next high. Something, awaiting for the day the whole world fucking dies. Anyway, my God, I love that song, Disciple. I got to go listen to it. I should take a break right now, but I'll keep going. God Send Death is great too. New Faith. Those are, again, those 3, Disciple, God Send Death, and New Faith, those are as good as Necrophobic, Altar of Sacrifice, and Jesus Saves. Great. A little bit mixed album. This, unlike Divine Intervention, this one I got into half of it, the other I didn't. Divine Intervention was, I kind of get into all the songs a little bit, but for me this one was mixed. But in general, I mean, it's still Slayer. I think if you're a Slayer fan, you can't go wrong with any Slayer album. But I love this album for nothing else but for Disciple and God Send Death and New Faith. Next one. This is the reason I'm doing this is Slayer is one of the few bands. I've bought over 2,000 records or CDs in my life. Slayer is one of the few that I've bought everything they've done, including this box set. This was the soundtrack to the Apocalypse in 2003. I guess like most box sets are for diehard fans, and yeah, I guess it's more for collectors. They're not really something that you spend too much time with. looking at this now, this is 4 discs. Actually, no, 3 discs and then a DVD. The first 2 discs, it's basically like a greatest hits. Slayer never had like a greatest hits or I can't say greatest. It's a best of compilation. But the first two discs are basically, the Slayer songs that were in their set list for all those years. And then the third one was called, it was all kind of unreleased stuff. Ice Titan, live in California, I think, in 1983. I don't know whatever became of Ice Titan. I don't even remember that. I guess I listened to it at the time. Some early versions of Raining Blood. Some live songs, live in Brazil, live in Michigan, live in California. Yeah, for diehards. And even though I'm a diehard, I was diehard enough to buy it. Didn't pay too much attention to it. The DVD, I don't even remember it. I'm sure, obviously, I watched it when it came out. I watched it when it was new. Don't know if I saw it again. Maybe I should try this again. I had the EPK for Diabolist and Musica from '98. So a typical box set, a mix of the big songs that you'd expect to hear, and Angel of Death is the first song, and they did some digging and came up with some stuff to please the hardcore. So, Soundtrack to the Apocalypse. There's the packaging. It came in this kind of plastic cover, and there's the album, or the packaging. No, what is this? Oh yeah, 3 CDs and a DVD. All right. Not recommended. I again only recommended for the hardcores. Let me put this back. Soundtrack to the Apocalypse. Christ Illusion. This came out in 2006. This was there was a lot of hype for this album because Dave Lombardo was back. Dave Lombardo had left in 91 or 92, something like that. So he had been gone for 14, 15 years. And there was a lot of hype because everybody was very excited because Dave Lombardo was coming back. Now, I want to say, I love Dave Lombardo. He's probably, not my opinion, I think just the general opinion, he's probably considered the best thrash metal drummer ever. He did things that he was the first one to do. He played faster than anybody. He was precise. He was a drum god. But like a lot of people, when they go away or, if they die, their legend becomes maybe bigger than, not bigger than it deserves, but people, when you miss things or when things are taken away from you, they become bigger. Now, I didn't care too much about Dave Lombardo coming back because he never, and I don't mean this in a negative way, he never wrote one note of music for a Slayer album. He played drums, and he was great, as I said, the best, maybe even my favorite, not just the general consensus. So everybody was by this point, the internet was in full force, and everybody in metal circles was talking about that Dave Lombardo was going to be back for Christ Illusion. Plus, as I mentioned earlier with album covers, Larry Carroll did the artwork, the painting, and he did Rain and Blood. So people had this idea, wow, the artwork from the guy who did Rain and Blood, the original drummer who played on all their classic albums. And I wouldn't say this album was a disappointment to me, but I maybe just never had those super high expectations like other people did. But again, I will say that this had at least two songs, Cult and Jihad, that were like the best Slayer songs ever. Those should be songs that they you would put up there with Angel of Death and Mandatory Suicide and Black Magic and things like that. So Jihad and Cult, amazing Slayer songs. The rest of the album was, to me, a little bit like God Hates Us All. Some songs were, they were Slayer songs, but maybe for me didn't hit me that much. But at least two fantastic songs on here. They won a Grammy for this for, I don't know if they won or they were nominated. I think they won for Eyes of the Insane. For whatever that is worth. Slayer isn't really a band, or I think Slayer fans, the Grammys are more for, a different type of music or a different type of artist or fans. But I think Slayer won a Grammy for Eyes of the Insane, which I didn't. It was an okay song, but it's the Grammys. What do you want? So again, another one that's a little bit incomplete. Not a bad Slayer album. Again, it depends on timing too. If this album had come out after Rain and Blood or after South of Heaven or Show No Mercy or something, I maybe would have loved it. But as bands, as their career gets bigger and as their catalog gets larger, you have different expectations. So again, not a bad album. If you've never heard Slayer before and you like this kind of music, I would recommend it. You would probably love it. But as a Slayer fan for a long time, I feel like I'm saying, like I'm being negative about it, but I'm not. The same with Divine Intervention. The last few I've talked about, I keep saying it, but no problem. All right, 2009, World Painted Blood. I love this album. I think this was the best one they had done at that point, maybe since, probably since Seasons in the Abyss. I love this album a lot. The title track, World Painted Blood, it had a very classic Slayer feel to it. Unit 731 also. Snuff was very, very aggressive, very brutal song. Beauty Through Order. Hate Worldwide is great. I Stab You Right Between the Eyes. For me, again, one of the Public Display of Dismemberment. That's a bad title and maybe not the best song. But Psychopathy Red, again, top 5, top 10 Slayer song. That's just a brutal song. Fast, heavy, great riffs, great lyrics, good. It has that Slayer attitude. This album I liked a lot. This was the last time I saw them. I saw them, they played in Mexico City in 2011. And Gary Holt was filling in. Gary Holt was filling in for Jeff Hanneman, who had the spider bite. And a lot of people didn't like that. I didn't care. I think Gary Holt is great. I'm a huge Exodus fan. And at the time, it was temporary. And what are they supposed to do? They're not going to stop. But I saw them on that tour in 2011 in Mexico City in a big arena, and they had it scaled down, of course, but I loved it. So that was the last time I saw Slayer, was 2011 on World Painted Blood tour. Very good album, very good. As I said, best probably since Seasons in the Abyss. Good one. Now the last one. Repentless. This came out in 2015 or 16? 2015 this came out. Again, a little bit mixed. This was a weird album. And, when I first heard it, when I first heard the full album, I thought, there's nothing really that really catches my attention. And I thought, this doesn't really sound like Slayer. Maybe because Jeff Hanneman, again, maybe it was, as I mentioned earlier, one of these predispositions. You kind of decide things. Jeff Hanneman had died in May 2nd, 2013. So right away, I think people thought that this album, they said, and people were singing, no Jeff Hanneman, no Slayer. I don't really care about that. I think Hanneman had a songwriting credit on maybe Piano Wire, which is a really, really good song. Or Chasing Death, I'm not sure. So maybe the fact that Hanneman wasn't on it was the first album without Hanneman. Although who knows how much he played on Slayer albums, at least the more recent albums. He played solos, I guess. But I think Kerry King played rhythm, all the rhythm, I think on the previous 3 or 4 Slayer albums, I'm not sure. So I don't know how much Hanneman was missed, and I don't know if the reason that I felt this album was because of the lack of Hanneman. But again, it's not a bad album. Repentless, the title track, is again one of the, like I said earlier, Slayer is one of the bands that they've never had a bad album. Some are not as good as others, but they've never had a music from the Elder. They've never had a Saint Anger or a Lulu or a lot of bands have that one real stinker in their catalog. Slayer never had a bad album. But the title track, Repentless, is a great song. Kind of strange. It was like the lifestyle of Slayer. They said it was the Jeff Hanneman anthem. Kerry King said that. Piano Wire, as I said, is a good one. I think Jeff Hanneman had a hand in that. So when I first heard it, I thought, nothing really caught me. And then sometime later, I remember talking about this with a friend of mine, Monty, Kevin Montavon. I said, what was I thinking when I listened to it a couple of weeks ago or last week or something? I didn't think it was that good. Now I love it. And so I kind of went back and forth. Every time I listened to it, I either loved it or just thought, it's kind of Slayer going through the motions. I don't know where I stand at this point. I haven't listened to this in a long time. The full album, I haven't listened to for a long time. I hear some songs occasionally that come on in random in my, playlist shuffling, something like that. But it's a Slayer album. It's not that different from anything else they ever did. But I think Jeff Hanneman, I don't know if he was missed, but a lot of people think he was missed. And that was it. And I didn't see them on that tour because they played in their farewell tour that they said they were done, which I'll talk about in a second. And they were playing here at a festival in Mexico City called, I think it was Hell in Heaven or Force Fest, I think. And it was in a really, really bad venue, really, really far out of the city, which is really far for me because I'm in the south. I'm south of Mexico City and it was in the north. And it was a big mud pit. That was a very infamous concert for many, many reasons. I think people were setting fires. Some bands canceled at literally the last second and didn't play. So I don't regret not going. I regret that, I can't really regret. I wish Slayer had done if it was going to be their last show in Mexico City, I wish they had done a proper show instead of playing at the top of a festival with a bunch of other bands and expensive tickets. And it rained horribly that whole weekend and it was a big mud fest. So I don't regret not going. I just wish Slayer had done a proper show. That's why I didn't go to see the last Slayer show in Mexico City. Now, about people want to talk about if Slayer is really finished or not. People love to think they're smart and that they know everything in advance and everybody's saying, they're going to come back. So just like when Motley Crue announced earlier this year or late last year, whatever it was, they were coming back. It is, I knew they were never going to retire their final tour, Kiss or all these other bands. So everybody's saying, no, Slayer's going to come back. I don't think they will. I can't really explain why. I just think they're not the type of band to do that. I guess a lot of these bands do it as a gimmick or something like that. I don't think Slayer will come back. I think Tom Araya is done with music or with Slayer. I think it's no secret that he didn't really like it. He didn't like the lifestyle over the last few years, and he wanted to live a quiet life and be with his family. I'm not saying Slayer won't do anything, but I think as far as like touring as Slayer, regular tours, I don't think they'll ever do that again. Maybe they'll do a one-off show or something, but I think Slayer is finished. And I'm sure they have some stuff in the vault that will come out at some point. And then these people are going to come out and say, see, I told you, Slayer isn't retiring. They're full of it. So that's it. That's all the Slayer albums. I think I got them all. As I said, I think I can do it with... I think I can do 4 more bands. I could maybe stretch it to 4. Reviewing or talking about these whole discographies. I could stretch it maybe to 5. I don't know if I'll do them all. I have nothing else to do. But it has to be bands that I really, really like to have, that I have a history with. So if you're interested, I'll keep it secret who I'm going to do. For the 46 people that watch this, you'll have to watch again. You might be able to figure out who they are anyway. But that's it. So happy belated International Slayer Day from yesterday. You should always listen to Slayer. You should also listen to Vinam Savathi. And you can subscribe to my channel if you're not. Watch my videos. Do whatever you want. But that's all for now. See ya.